All right, so what I'm going to do here is I just happened to run into a group that was running through Gzemnid's Reliquary, which is a challenge that can take place that is part of the overall campaign for Menzoberranzan. And what you're going to see is sort of a series of pieces representing lore behind beholders and this Gzemnid, who is like a beholder god of sorts. I don't really love it when games take us against gods, so I sort of like to leave it out there, even though the text of this says that we're fighting this god. I don't love god killing the way I did when I was in high school in Dungeons and Dragons. I like to think of gods as being really way stronger than we are. But in this video, you will see that we go up against this creature, maybe god, Gzemnid, very powerful beholder. Let's leave it at that at the very least. And this carries into the lore that we really see represented in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons around beholders, taking beholders to another level of what's behind them and how they actually dream things into existence. In fact, beholders, the way they reproduce is by dreaming of another beholder and surviving the dream beholder that shows up and being able to run away from each other so that you now have 2 beholders. Otherwise, one kills the other. So talk about a really rough way to come into the world. You just got dreamed into existence and now you have to fight for your life. So I'm joining random party. We were, not the most skilled folks, but we're not the worst. In fact, I think a lot of these folks were from Alliance, so I take it back. We're actually pretty good. I'm not very good at this with my character, and here I'm playing it not with my usual drow, but with my Githzerai fighter. And so the first thing that happens is Gzemnid just sort of summons a dream version of a creature, sort of powerful Minotaur champion. And so we have to take this Minotaur out. And as you can see, the hit points are dropping fast, we're doing a lot of damage, but it's got a lot of tricks up its sleeve. And in the back, you might just see kind of up there is Gzemnid staring down upon us, and he triggers a number of attacks, these sort of like bolts that go through. I was very unprepared. I didn't even have like a stone of health equipped, so sorry for how poor I am in this video, but that didn't keep me from enjoying the lore of it and the various angles. Gzemnid summons Umber Hulks, Displacer Beasts, right? These are all creatures that are typical of the Underdark. The green ray here joining 2 characters together. If they touch, then they go flying up into the air. I think at one point I get caught doing this. There are trap kind of devices, fields of death. The Minotaur is tearing away at it, and eventually we take down that Minotaur. There's still a few other monsters around, but now Gzemnid himself, or itself, comes into the fray. Very cool looking beholder. You can see kind of looks like some of the ice beholder sculptures that have been done by the D&D team. There's also a giant Ettercap to the right. And so Gzemnid will kind of fight us for a while. He creates sort of fields of I don't know if it's acid or something that's very harmful, as well as focusing his eye rays on us. And then these trap kind of segments that show up on the ground. Really hectic, really chaotic. And when this, this trial's been out for a while, for several months, so people are a little more accustomed to it. But when it first showed up, these kinds of effects, like what is Gzemnid doing right now? Oh, a giant explosion of energy. That chaos would just throw people for a loop, and everybody would get killed. And still that happens with like pickup groups. So you can see here, there's some things like I got stunned because I didn't put my shield up in time as the tank. And yeah, lots of attacks, which fits the idea of a beholder. A beholder has these 10 stalks. It should be able to, from each of these eyes, be shooting all kinds of different effects at you, right? And keeping the party on their toes. Now, beholders in 5th edition have some issues. They're not the best design in terms of accomplishing that. They're a little random in how they use their eye rays. Now, so that was first phase, right? So first phase is this Minotaur. I'm going to pause the video here. There's this Minotaur that gets summoned. Then Gzemnid comes and fights you. You do enough damage to Gzemnid, and Gzemnid suddenly pushes you into this hallucination. And this phase is called Defeat the Hallucinations. And what's kind of fun is the hallucinations are random. So you're not sure what you'll fight at this phase, and you can't completely prep for it. But whatever it is that shows up, there'll be 2 things, and they will represent mechanics from whatever they came from. So in this case, we got Valindra. and Storvald. And Valindra has showed up in several versions. This is the version that shows up as part of the Dragon series that with the now I forget the name of Dragon Peak. I forget the exact name of the campaign, but the very dragon heavy themed campaign. Valindra comes from that aspect of it, so she does those kinds of attacks. But Valindra, lore-wise, is a Thayan ally, sort of, often working with the Thayans, let's say, manipulating them to her ends. She is a lich. She has Neverwinter in her sights. She has always wanted to see that city fall for a number of reasons, including be able to easily get access to the Dread Ring, which is how we began. If you go back to my first video on the lore of Neverwinter, where we go into the Dread Ring, Valindra is scheming right then and there, and she's been scheming ever since to take over the city of Neverwinter. So a perfect foe. We also have Storvald from Storm King's Thunder, and one of the videos I have deals with Storvald and all of his machinations. So he shows up, and they do all of the things that they'll do. By having two foes, immediately you're like, oh, which one do we go after? And sometimes there's a clear choice. I don't know if there really was here. So we have a little bit of people attacking both, but mostly I think we end up focusing on Storvald. Storvald is not particularly tough, but you can see the ice that shows up, that permafrost, freezes various players in place. And if you don't get them, they're dead. Storvald also has some very heavy hits that he does, particularly on a couple of people right in front of him. And he attacks faster than he does in his normal version in the game. So yeah, that's it. It's kind of endure his big hits and deal. Meanwhile, Valindra's chucking all kinds of things at you. Those red circles you see, that's part of Valindra's attack sequence that she's doing. With Storvald dead, we can now go after Valindra. She's, I think, draining someone of health. She has kind of these big red circles that are plunging down. Look at that chaos, right? Complete and utter chaos. Not what I would do in a tabletop game to go to this level where the players have no idea what's going on. We also get some mechanics here from Storm King's Thunder even at the end, but now we're back. And this part looks kind of tame here. I'm going to pause it again because it's so wild. You know, at first you're like, oh, we're back in the cavern. Oh no, you're not just back in Gzemnid's cavern. You now face a whole bunch of versions of Gzemnid, multiple beholders of mini Gzemnids, and a central tower from which one major fire-like beam comes in and rotates slowly clockwise around from like a double-edged lightsaber, if you will, rotating around the cavern. If that thing hits you, you're dead, or at least down. There's also some minor ones as well. So now we'll see this. So what you have to do is try to deal as much damage to any of these beholders as you can while weathering their attacks, and then move on before that red beam you see back there catches up with you, but not so far that you run into the other side of the red beam. So avoid the fire beam, do as much damage as you can to the beholders, hopefully killing them, and then move on. When you kill a beholder, you get a ghost beholder, and that's a really cool thing. Like, I am totally down with that kind of meanness. When your players defeat something and it comes back in ghost form, that is super. I'm such a fan of that. And you can see, you know, these, so we defeated that phase. We got through all the different beholders being defeated. So now Gzemnid shows up again, healed somewhat. Here I have that green thing attached to me, so I move away to break the beam, and then I go back and fight. So we're now fighting true big Gzemnid again, and this goes on for a bit. And then a couple of other kind of interesting things happen. You know, these are ire attacks that are taking place. You see explosion of sort of like fire that it goes outwards. I get the green thing on me again, dragging you to another player. The player got vaulted up in the sky. I mean, it's really one of the more chaotic things Neverwinter has done. I go charging in there, and you see these gelatinous cubes. And this is a sort of fun effect that one of the things, it's kind of like a catch-22. I'm going to pause it again. Gelatinous cubes are coming in towards you. And if you don't kind of generally worry about it, you just keep focusing on Gzemnid, the players will usually defeat the cubes also. But some of the characters can have an icon over their heads, which is you're going to get a ton of damage on you from Gzemnid. So you get a catch-22 choice, and I love this. This is the kind of thing I love throwing into games. You get to decide, hey, Do you want to suffer all of that damage that's coming your way? Or do you want to jump into a gelatinous cube? Because if you jump in the gelatinous cube, you take damage from the cube, and the cube prevents you from doing anything because you're like glommed up inside of it. But it stops that effect, and you won't take all the damage from Gzemnid's eye. So that's usually the way to do it. If you have that icon overhead, you jump into a gelatinous cube. It did not happen to me, so I don't get to show off that effect. But it is really fun, and you can see here, like, multiple of these sort of flashing red things. The arrow down flashing red means group up together, and then you divide the damage around everybody. I think I actually ended up inside a gelatinous cube there just by mistake because of all the chaotic stuff. So yeah, flashing arrows down, everybody has to group up. You want your tank to be there to take the damage, healing. Yeah, you see the red icons? I think those are the ones where you technically would like to be inside of a gelatinous cube. I think that might be right. So now we go again to another of these phases with the red beam in the center and the multiple Gzemnids, but there's more. There's an additional minor ray going around, fireball ray, that can deal a lot of damage. It doesn't kill you when it touches it, but it does damage. You can see that right there. So you just have to weather that, right? And someone drops, you bring them back up, you keep going, and the ghost beholders will still do damage, but when you turn them all into ghost beholders, once again you face Gzemnid, this time for the last time. I'm going to pause it because there's another kind of cool feature. This green ray in the back here, there's sort of like some kind of little like eye looking thing, and there's a green, it's almost like a green fence, chain link kind of thing of energy that's all around the perimeter of the area. And this is very much so a DPS check, or a pressure thing, as you would have in a tabletop game. That ray thing is the fence, if you will, of death energy. Necrotic doom is slowly shrinking inwards towards Gzemnid. So this creates a time pressure. You must kill Gzemnid before the green death stuff gets to you. If you don't, everybody dies, and that's the end of the event. You've got to redo it if you want to try it again. But if you couldn't do that, you're probably redoing it may not help. So that's what's going on here. Fortunately, I'm in a good group. We're going to prevail like the heroes of Neverwinter we are. We're all in there doing our business, avoiding the red zones when we can, tearing away at Gzemnid. You can see a lot of damage being dealt. So even though those green chains of doom are coming in towards us, getting a little bit closer, we've got more than enough time to tear away at Gzemnid. All these red zones and damage that are coming in. We are able to weather that well enough with our various healers. That's a big glowing yellow healing zone on the ground. Getting a warlock that's boosting our damage, and Gzemnid falls. You see that kind of very cool look as Gzemnid drops to the ground. And so we now get to go to the chests and loot them for stuff, which, I tried re-rolling and stuff. I did not get anything particularly cool. A little silly shadow wolf mount. And then I have to craft a key here, which is one of the things you do with that. I've talked sometimes about the currency you get in the game, so you can do things like craft the beholder key. Then you use the beholder key, and now you can open the chest in Gzemnid's reliquary and stuff like that once it gets created. So wow, huh? That's some chaos right there. Do not, if you're DM, don't throw this many things at your players unless, boy, you really know what you're doing, and your players really, really love that sort of thing. I guess my inventory was full here, so I couldn't make a key. So there I am, quickly trying to create space so that I can craft the key and open the second treasure chest, which I think gave me really lame stuff. So I make my key, and with the key in place, now I can open the sweet, sweet chest and get, I think, lame stuff. Scroll of life, that's fine. Way to resurrect people. And astral diamonds. So yeah, there you have it, right? Like wild, wild, wild. So you can think of this as the end, maybe, of the campaign. I mean, it's not quite the end. Really, you can do this trial at various points, kind of whenever you want, in the kind of Menzoberranzan sequence. But it's sort of one of the big finale story points of the Menzoberranzan experience is going in and doing that trial with a group of friends. That kind of provides a little bit of a cap to the experience. But yeah, that's really it. With having seen that Gzemnid's trial, that is really now the completion of Menzoberranzan, and what remains for us is to go off into the final neighborhood of Narbondelin. We'll do that next time.